Welcome, welcome. Today's date is March 22nd, 2021. Happy birthday, Rosalind. And this is our regularly scheduled meeting beginning now at 6:30 p.m. Again, the time now is 6:30 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Again, you can access the meeting via DeSoto ISD website, http://DeSotoISDTX.swagit.com/live. Again, the subjects to be discussed or considered or upon which any formal action may be taken are listed below. Items do not have to be taken in the same order as shown in this meeting notice. Unless removed from the consent agenda, items identified within the consent agenda will be acted on at one time. That brings us again to item 2, which is closed session. Description: during the closed section, the community will be able to view the monthly celebrations and recognitions. We're moving into closed section under item A, pursuant to Texas Government Code section 551.074, deliberations concerning contract non-renewals. Again, the time now is 6:31 p.m. and we are moving into closed session at this time. All right. The time is now 7:30 and we are returning from closed session. Now we are entering the public session. Again, I just want to say welcome and happy Herstory Month to all the women of the world, running the world, because we're girls. Yes, thank you, Beyonce. It is such an awesome opportunity to be with you all this 22nd day of March. Again, happy birthday to my sister Rosalind. As we begin, I believe we're going to have an invocation by Trustee and Pastor Cooper, all right, followed by pledges being led by Vice President Fleming. Shall we stand for prayer?
Okay, let us pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for bringing us all here for this meeting. And Father God, we ask that you would be in the midst of this meeting. We thank you for the opportunity to serve your children in this capacity. And right now, God, we ask that you will unify our spirits so that we can make a uniform decision about our children tonight, Father God, and their well-being. Help us right now. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, thank you so much to Pastor Trustee Cooper for that invocation, as well as the pledges led by Vice President Fleming. Now we will read our mission statement. The mission of DeSoto ISD is to ensure students, without exception, learn and grow at their highest level. Again, our vision in DeSoto ISD is to inspire curiosity and consciousness, develop character, build courage, and nurture compassion. Yes, that is that new 2021 special. All right, we do have a quorum with all 7 board members present. And now we're moving on to item B, which is celebration and recognition of the 2021 state champions, the Lady Eagles varsity basketball team. Yes, a wonderful way to kick off and end Women's Herstory Month. Shout out to our Lady Eagles. And I believe that there is a celebration and recognition at this time. I'll turn it over to you.
Just go ahead, please. Go ahead and play. Go ahead and play.
No. At this time, we have the awesome privilege this evening to celebrate our DeSoto High School Lady Eagles girls basketball team. This year, the team battled and persevered through an unprecedented season. With hard work and an unrelenting spirit, this team soared to excellence by winning a district championship, a regional championship, and a school making history by bringing home the first state championship in the history of the program. With their defeat of the Cypress Creek Cougars 53-37. In addition to the championship win, Samaya Smith was also named the MVP of the state tournament. Ayana Thompson and Kendall Brown they made first team All-State. So tonight we have some of this esteemed history-making team on the call with us on today. And we also have Coach Andrea Robinson here with us this evening. And trustees, we know that you wanted the opportunity to celebrate this momentous occasion and to congratulate this history-making team. We want to extend the first opportunity to you to make your comments and share your sentiments. And Ms. Robinson, you can follow with your comments after the trustees conclude. At this time, let's welcome our basketball team and our trustees.
Yes. I hope you hear the applause and the claps. I hope that you all know that you had school board trustees down there in San Antonio, Texas, cheering you on. So excited to, again, witness history, but also seeing you all persevere throughout this awesome season. You are both champions in the classroom, as I know we have some that have already signed with colleges and universities, as well as on the court. So ladies, from President Sargent, I just definitely want to say congratulations to you. Delayed is not denied. I know last year we came really close, but 2021 is just that much sweeter. I always say it's a great day to be an Eagle, but in 2021, it's a great day to be state champs, okay? And I will pass the mic to other trustees. At this time, I'll defer to Vice President Fleming if you would like to start, and we'll go that way.
I just want to say to Coach Robinson and staff, thank you for your dedication to ensuring that our students know what excellence is, that they are able to attain the highest level of excellence. To the Lady Eagles, you have turned impossible into possible. You'll forever carry that for the rest of your lives. And I just thank you for your tenacity, for your commitment, for your perseverance. And thank you for just showing the world what it means to be a DeSoto Eagle. Congratulations again.
Yes, and Trustee Cooper.
Congratulations, Coach, and all of you ladies. Y'all are so special to us. Coach, I often use you as an example of what a good coach is because I believe in what you do. I love how passionate you are about what you do, and you do an excellent job of motivating our girls. So many of these young ladies I'm so proud of. I've been knowing some of them for a lot of years, and just to see you achieve what you work so hard for is so special. All of the work that we do here is when you do things like this, it makes it all make sense, and it makes it all feel a lot better for us. So we do what we do so that you can do what you do and be the best that you can be. Once again, congratulations. Keep up the good work. And it doesn't stop here. We're doing it again next year.
Oh, thank you.
Love that. Trustee Clark, and we can go down the line.
Congratulations, ladies. I remember being in San Antonio in 2019, putting on those medals, those second place medals, but you guys were still winners to the city of DeSoto. So to bring it full home in 2021, you guys earned every right, every privilege, and every honor from this city, this community, and this district. So congratulations, your hard work and perseverance paid off. So kudos on your next chapters, and we look forward to seeing what's in store for next year, Coach. Congratulations, ladies.
Thank you.
Congratulations. We are very, very proud of you. It is always fun to go to San Antonio and watch a game. I did not get to go this year, but I did get to watch on television, and it was an extremely exciting, well-played game. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I had the opportunity to be there and to see the excitement. And all I can say to you, Lady Eagles, congratulations and continue to soar.
Coach, I do know as a coach's wife, an old coach's wife, I know how hard it is to keep up the momentum, to keep up the passion, to keep up the practices. And I know how tired sometimes after some of those games you can be, but you did it. You did it. You kept that team going for the entire year, and we're very proud of you and your girls. And we're ready to cheer you on in the future. We know that you will keep that passion going for years and years, and we appreciate you. We really appreciate you and what you bring to the game, bring to the table. So girls, congratulations. Job well done. We're so proud of you. It's a great day to be an Eagle. Great day. Way to go, girls. Thank you.
Yes, and I would like to have this esteemed honor to represent and shout out the entire Robinson household for giving us not one, not two, but 3 state champions, Coach Andrea Robinson.
Wow.
If you wanted to share anything,
is it
I definitely invite you to do.
Okay, yes. So, man, wow. This is, first of all, I'm so proud of this team. I've said over and over and over, this is probably the toughest team I've ever coached. Just the things that they've been through and the way that they've persevered and kept going and never looked for an excuse. We've been through so much, probably stories that'll never be told, but these kids are tough men and they're fighters and they never look for an excuse. So I want to first just let the girls know just how proud I am of them and their accomplishment of making history. It was not easy. And then to the board and to the community, the love and support has been amazing. I appreciate all of you and I appreciate all the support that we've gotten from the community. It was so awesome to see school board members at the game cheering and yelling louder than anybody else and coming on the floor. I mean, that means a lot. It feels like family. And I appreciate your support, man. It means everything. And it makes us want to get back in this gym and work even harder to continue to make the city of DeSoto proud. So thank y'all so much for the love and the support. Thank you very much.
Hey, I'll be really quick here, but this is what perseverance looks like. I can tell you that these ladies, Coach Robinson has been to places where it didn't feel good, but they kept coming back. And I think this is representative of the story of DeSoto. Folks ask me all the time, are we athletics or are we academics? Today, I can proudly say that we are both. These ladies are student athletes, they're scholars, they're getting full rides to schools to do exceptionally well, both in the classroom and on the court. We don't have to choose one or the other here, and we won't. We're going to excel in both, and y'all are prime examples of that today. I'm thankful. You know how I feel about you all, ladies, coaches, and let's do it again next year.
Thank you.
I know we also have some of our star state champion players on the call, and if our ladies would love to say anything, Lady Eagles, I would love to give you that opportunity.
Anybody want to go? Kendall?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you for all the support throughout the season. That's
Hi, you guys. I just want to say thank you for your continued support. You know, we really appreciate it. You know, without y'all, you know, none of this would be possible. So thank you for the support.
I just want to say thank you for all the support that y'all give us.
Awesome, right? We didn't hear you, MVP. You gonna say it one more time for us?
She's a whisperer.
Yeah, I just said thank you for all the support that y'all give us.
Well, again, thank you all for joining us and coming on for the board meeting. As you know, we spend over half of our meeting talking about student outcomes and just recognizing and celebrating what our students are doing right here in DeSoto ISD. And it's always beautiful to have those bragging rights, if I do say so myself. But definitely as a proud alumna of DeSoto ISD, and just to see the Lady Eagles achieve this first ever state championship, I know it will not be the last. And so I'm just definitely wanting to give you all love and support and recognition, and just thank you all, and let's do it again.
Awesome. Thank you for having us.
Yes, yes. Awesome, 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 awesome. Right. Well, I mean, what do you do next after that? I just, like I said, I love standing in the sun when we get some good news. We have to recognize it and we have to shout it to the rooftops. Next, we will have 4, which is our public comments on agenda items. And I do not believe that we have need of that. I'm sorry. All right, and we're moving now from 4 to 5. Board, that brings us to board monitoring. Goal 4, individualized growth. All right, well, let's start it off, board. As you know, we are doing student monitoring every month for at least 1 hour, because it is very important for us to deep dive into the data to see how our students are performing year to year, and now middle of the year, as we review this data for individualized growth. I do want to read growth goal 4, just to ensure that everybody is on the same page, especially for our viewers. And so essentially, we have a goal for individualized growth to increase for every grade level. And today we're going to be looking at middle of the year data that's going to cover pre-K through 8. All right. Dr. Weaver, I just want to ensure that based off of the data sets presented for our progress monitoring, that we are in fact looking at middle of the year data spanning across all campuses, pre-K through 8, or do we also have some 8th grade data in here? High school data in here as well?
Thank you, President Sargent. No, this is just our elementary and middle school students on this round.
Okay, so with that, you have confirmed that it is the data. You are now free to give us an overview.
All right, thank you very much, trustees, as we work through some of these technical difficulties here. Today we're going to talk about our ability to progress monitor students at elementary and middle school levels. And we are specifically looking at students and to what degree are they hitting their growth goals in reading and math, and then in both. And so on our first goal here, we are looking at the percentage of our students that are on track to meet their growth goal in reading. And in your packets, according to our progress measures, and it's really important, I want to make this distinction, our goal for this, the goal that we're progress monitoring is the percentage of students.
You're on
the big screen. I thought it was. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So the goal that we're monitoring today is goal 4. We are looking at percentage of students, our interim goal progress measure, until we start to use our recommended universal screener next year, which will be NWA MAP assessment. Our interim goal is based on our current universal screeners that we've been monitoring this entire year. And the goal that we're looking at today is the percentage of students our baseline was 41% of students at the elementary and middle school levels were hitting their individual growth goals back in February 2020. And then the goal target is 60% for May of 2025. So the goal target for this year, so what we're measuring our interim success by is 41%. And so, what we're looking for all students right now is 41% is the target that we've agreed to. And so if we look at our performance on all of our groups, so all students, based on our 41% target, as you can see here, we have 49.9% of our students that have met their individual growth goals in reading based on the universal screener. And then in terms of our additional, as we disaggregate our student populations, if we look specifically at our African-American students, the target for those students was 40%. And currently, based on our data, those students are performing at 50% of our students are meeting their growth goals in reading. And then our Latinx students, the goal was 40%, 47%. Our Latinx students are meeting their growth targets in reading. If you look at students that have distinguished themselves as being biracial or two or more races, 46% was the goal. For 48% of those students were achieving their goals. Our students that require special education services, the target goal for this year is 37.4%. At this moment, 51.5% of our students that require special education services are meeting their individual reading growth goal. If you look at our students that we consider economically disadvantaged, 40% was the target. 49% of those students are hitting their growth goal. If you look at our students who are have limited English proficiency, the target was 42%. 50% of those students are achieving their goal. And then because we are in this virtual and in-person environment, we've continued to disaggregate the data based on that way of learning. And the goal for both those groups have been 41%, and 52% of our students that are receiving learning remotely are hitting their individual growth target, and then 45% of our students in person. And if we look at the very bottom, as we look at these data based on campuses, all of our campuses except 3 campuses, Ruby Young, The Meadows, and Woodridge, all of our campuses outside of those campuses, students are meeting their individual growth target. So again, our target was 41%. We are currently at 49.9%. And we show all campuses except 3, which are almost there. So they're just less than 5% below our end of year target. All the campuses are making progress, actually, exceeding or meeting their end of year target. So let me pause there and see if there's other questions based on these data.
Yes. So I guess just for clarification, since we are talking about the data sets, is this the MAP assessment in both of the percentages presented? Because I know there was conversation about using the different assessment tool.
Thank you. Great question. No, so we have not implemented MAP assessment. So we'll implement the MAP assessment again in next year. So when our goals were adopted, the structures that were adopted were for us moving forward. We don't have that assessment this year. We use our universal screeners, so the Chief 3000, it's iStation. Those are the assessments that we use to determine progress in both reading and math for elementary and middle school students. And so those are the assessments that we use this year.
Okay, so I just want to re-clarify. So both of the percentages that are being compared are using the same universal screener?
Yes.
Okay, but not the math assessment, but it is the same universal screener in both?
Yeah, so in 2020, we used these universal screeners, and in 2021, we're using the same universal screeners.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make that point of clarification. Board, again, this is open discussion as we are monitoring student data. If you have any questions, this was just one data set.
I do.
Yes, Vice President Bruno.
Dr. Weaver, as we're going through this data, two questions that I have. The first question is, this is the first time that the board is actually monitoring board goal 4. And so my first question is, why wasn't a BOY included in the data, which is beginning of the year?
What happened?
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. Your question is, why wasn't a beginning of the year included?
Yes.
So I get, and this is similar to the question you asked earlier about the baseline. How do we know the baseline of the individual growth?
Well, so that's going to be my second question. So that is the second question, but if you can answer that in two and one, that's fine, because that would have been my second question.
So what we're measuring here is, again, the percentage of students that are on track to hit their individual growth targets. And our baseline was taken from last year, because we're monitoring year over year performance, or the last year compared to this year.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're looking at is the percentage of students that met their individual growth targets last year compared to where we are currently this year. So we're not necessarily measuring where they were at the beginning of the year explicitly, but in order for us to determine if they're meeting their individual growth targets, it factors in where they were at the beginning of the year, and if every single month, if they're making progress towards achieving their growth targets. So students have to achieve certain scores every single month to be considered on track to meet their growth targets. And these data show that every single month, 49.9% of our students continue to hit the growth target that was necessary to deem them on track to hit their individual growth targets. Does that make sense?
So yeah, so that gives me some insight as to how you were calculating it. So when we're talking about a baseline, the baseline are these students who were in the district as of last year?
So this baseline is based on the students that were in the district last year who took this assessment, and what percentage of those students last year were on track to meet their individual growth target. We're looking at, it's a different group of students, because but we're measuring last year where we were versus where we are right now. And that's been consistent with how we've been communicating these data points, because that's the only way we can do comparing last year versus this year.
So is it, okay, so then if you're looking at it from that perspective, then because most of the time you've given us is this ISD data? Or is this just a diagnostic, just the universal screen? Okay, so in the universal screener, before I know we've seen things that actually shows tiered growth. And so this one actually shows performance of where a third grader would have been last year to where they are as a fourth grader. Because when we're talking about individual, I'm just trying to capture how are we really truly capturing individual. How do I know if Trustee Cooper, Trustee Sargent, and Trustee Fleming was sitting in a room that I actually grew based off of the data that's been given?
So let me try to explain it. So each universal screener gave students a percentile rank on their beginning of the year assessment. Student growth goals were set so that a student is considered to make a year's worth of growth if their end of year percentile rank is greater or equal to their beginning of year percentile rank. So to determine if a student is on track at the middle of the year assessment, we did a similar calculation. A student is considered on track if their middle of the year percentile rank is greater than or equal to their beginning of the year percentile rank. So for instance, if a student scored at the beginning of the year a 244, then in November, that student needs to score a 247, December a 248, in January 249, and February 250. So the score continues, the measure continues to rise. As long as the student is hitting that measure, then they're considered to be on track to meet their growth targets.
Okay, so then if you're saying they're on the track, so is there a rubric or a checkpoint that says 250 is on target? Does it make
Yes, absolutely.
So, okay. So I think, so some of this, because when we're looking at it, some of that when I hear you speaking, I needed that context up front of saying, okay, here we are, this is what it is. So that way, looking at how we're measuring baseline performance to individual growth, because we're saying a baseline, but in my understanding, if anyone read this, probably, I don't know if other trustees had it, I was thinking, if I'm at a 240, I need you to be able to show that I'm at a 261, which means I'm on track.
Yes.
Because right now, all I see is percentages of the, everyone dividing in there saying they're on track, but on track based on what? I guess that's the piece that I'm
Gotcha, yeah. So what I hear you saying is it's important for me to provide you all with some type of document that shows how we're determining if kids are on track.
Absolutely.
So that you can see, all right, if we're saying 49%, then how do we determine that? And what are absolutely, that's something we can absolutely provide in our board report, for sure.
I would like to add to that as well. I think it'll also be important, since we are talking about individualized growth, to continue to group the students on grade level and not compare grade level in isolation. So if we're looking at data from last year to be fourth graders, then we should be looking at fifth grade data in comparison to fourth grade data to determine whether or not they retain the information, i.e. individualized growth. So that will definitely add to context as well. But again, great questions, trustees. Still looking at this first data point. I do have another question, but I will yield as we look around. Yes, Trustee Daniel, and then Dr. Clark.
Just a very short question. Where do our white and Asian students fit into this chart? Which student group are they in?
They will be in the all student group.
Okay.
Am I hearing you ask for us to break down kind of all the demographics in our district so we can see that?
Well, it looks like we don't have any white or Asian or any other groups here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should break it down.
And I think probably the way, and I don't see why we couldn't do that. I think why we see these certain groups where these were ones that were specifically included in our board goals and goal progress measures. And so, but I think just like we added virtual in person, there's no reason why we could not show where all of our students, based on demographics and how they're performing.
But I think our board goals were written for everybody.
Yes. We just did not have any specific goal progress measures broken out to identify those particular students in our organization. But that's not anything that we can't do, though. Okay. And thank you for bringing that to our attention, for sure.
I guess my question was going to be, I'm sorry.
Dr. Clark is next.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Trustee Cooper, she yielded the floor to you.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I guess my comments were going to be along those lines because the 3 elementary schools that we see that are lower, is that based on location, or is it just what's taking place inside the building? I guess that's what, if that question can be answered.
So what he's asking is saying, hey, we have 3 campuses, Ruby Young, The Meadows, and Woodridge, that are just below hitting their goals. Mm-hmm. And you're saying, why are those campuses not meeting their goal?
Yes.
And I think particularly for all campuses, and in this particular case, specifically for these 3 campuses, I think there is still something to say about us being providing reading instruction virtually.
Okay.
And, you know, there may be some students, particularly at these campuses, and on this particular goal, you know, a very small number of students, these are very small percentages that are below the target. So we feel really confident that they'll be able to make up this ground, especially with some of the new approaches to in-person learning that's taking place in our district. But, you know, for some kids, again, learning to read is best done in person. And I would venture to say that maybe some of these students, you know, are ones that we've identified to come back to campus, to be in person with the teacher, so they can, you know, receive some more personalized learning in the classroom.
All right.
Yes and no. I still want to hit, if we have elementary schools that are in certain areas of town and their numbers, is that a reason behind the numbers low, or is it just a fact of what's taking place inside the actual campus?
Yeah, and I don't think that it's a location issue at all. Just because of the demographics that we have in our district. And I think particularly at the Meadows, who is doing an exceptional job with a higher population of students that may come from foster parents, you know, they're just slightly below their mark. And so I absolutely think it's all to do with kind of what's happening in the building. You know, maybe there's some different nuances in how the schedule and how students are receiving teaching learning. I think it's also particularly around the percentage of students that are on campus versus remote. But I do not think at all that because of where they're located has an indicator for the type of performance that they're receiving right now on this assessment.
Okay.
So great question, Trustee Cooper. I'm actually going to piggyback off that question and ask the same question I always ask. And have we identified what the campuses are doing that are successful to be able to replicate it at the campuses that aren't successful? And if so, what does that look like?
You know, I think all of our teachers, particularly at these campuses that are being successful, are all honestly trying to do the very best that they can with trying to teach students remotely and in person. I think particularly because of the assessment that we're using, students have an opportunity to spend more time in the program, not just taking the assessment, but there is a learning plan for students in the program that gives students additional support to build student skills every single month. And so students have an opportunity to learn to take a test, to get a score, and then they have like a personalized plan that they work through in between those assessments. What our campuses are doing is spending some dedicated time making sure that kids are working in those programs. You see that a lot at home because, you know, students, that's part of their schedule. It's part of their routine. You spend X number of minutes, X number of days working in the program, you're gonna build your skill. And I think that's one of the things that we've been trying to do, you know, last couple of years as we started with these programs is there is a threshold you should meet with time on task. And if you're meeting that threshold, then you're gonna see some results. And what these campuses have done has been, you know, trying to do a very intentional job with getting kids more time on task. I think that's being replicated in other places. Aside from, in addition to just the additional small groups that teachers are, you know, pulling with students, both in person and virtually. You know, we had Dr. Asbury's come in and just made it very clear that, you know, small group, like we got to perfect our time in small group. And so what you started to see across our district is teachers spending more time and principals creating more opportunities for teachers to work with students in smaller groups, even if they're remote. And we've built that to our plan moving forward to make sure that kids have more time with expert teachers. And so I think that's kind of what you're starting to see in some of these places as well too. I think there has been slightly some COVID-related concerns. I think about the Meadows, some of the issues that they've had to deal with this year, unfortunate issues they had to deal with this year. You know, there's some reason for some very slight kind of below performance here, but by all means, they have been very resilient and showing up for kids on a daily basis, which is why they are slightly below hitting their target. I'm very confident they'll be able to do that too. Same thing for Woodridge and Ruby Young Elementary as well.
And the other question is, what has district done to specifically support those 3 campuses to help them grow to reach their goals?
So again, really excited about our new chief academic officer and our team, our principal supervisor, Deidre Hannibal, Keisha Coleman, director of pre-K through 3rd grade, all of our curriculum specialists, our principals. They've been working extremely hard with developing action plans and additional plans and implementing different instructional strategies. We've brought in some additional professional learning, particularly for special education and the content area for both reading and math. And so they've been actively on campuses. Our team has taken responsibility for certain campuses, provide support. And there's, again, embedded training and professional learning for teachers. It's been a hands-on approach to really making sure that kids are being successful and teachers are being successful and campuses are being successful, the best that we can during this pandemic. So I think the staff has done just an incredible job with jumping in and being flexible during this time.
Okay, last thing. And so I noticed that when thinking about our monitoring of the goals from the last time to this time, we're seeing that the same campuses are reappearing. So specifically, other than Dr. Ashby going into those schools, what other measures have been in place to support those campuses to see that they're truly being successful? Because literally we're seeing the same campuses. So that means there's something that the other campuses are doing that's not being conveyed to these campuses to give them the ample support that they need to thrive. So I'm just saying, what does that look like and feel like? And do those principals feel fully supported to where they can go out and do whatever they need to support their campuses?
Yeah, great question. I think just going into schools is not enough. And I think going into schools just gives us an idea of what's happening. But campus principals are on their campuses day in and day out. And they are trying to implement as many adjustments as they can without completely and continuously overwhelming teachers with changes. One of the things that's changing, though, is that we're bringing more kids on campus, and the instruction that is taking place is moving from being completely based on a virtual kind of remote teaching, where everyone, whether you're in person or you're at home, you're receiving your education through the computer, to now we are being very diligent with, if you're in person, you have an in-person experience. And teachers are teaching directly to students in person. And even those teachers that are teaching remotely are teaching very differently. It's trying to give kids a much more fuller classroom experience, even though they are remote. So I think, our campuses, our teachers, yes, they are in professional learning communities together. Yes, they share best practices, but the rubber really meets the road in the individual classrooms. And I think, principals are doing their absolute best to provide coaching and professional learning and support for teachers that, may be having a harder time. And I think that's just part of the job. I think you have just different, ways of approaching some of the academic challenges. But our principals are doing their absolute best to meet those needs for sure.
Okay. I know we have more than one data set. I do want to get to the next one, which is the percent meeting math growth goal. and we are off track there. So I really want to dive in to questions concerning this particular data set. And just for the sake of clarity, which assessment is used to gather this information?
And these are the same universal screeners. So our Chiefs 3000, our ice station, these are the same same universal screeners. And then again, MAP would be used next year.
Okay. So there is a considerable amount, all of student groups are not hitting the target. So overall, what are we seeing? Because there's not a difference. I mean, there is somewhat of a stark difference between those students that are virtual versus in person. So what have we narrowed down as the plan of action as it relates to this, or at least a root cause to why this is?
Yeah. So these data are very consistent with where we've been trending all year. We've seen us be on track or slightly above track in literacy, and then we've seen us be completely off track in math. And this is a trend that's been happening across the county, the state, and the country. So math instruction is just very different from the literacy instruction. And we're still implementing that virtually for all learners. And we're making a shift as we bring more students in person, but we are still not achieving the goals that we would want to achieve with math. I think the instructional delivery model, the mode rather, is impacted by our students' ability to excel in math as they've excelled in reading. Kind of math instruction is a series of complex, sometimes unrelated topics that oftentimes shift from grade level to grade level. Effective math instruction moves from concrete to representations to abstract. And that's challenging for some kids to receive, if they're by themselves at home or if they're working remotely. And so we've not necessarily perfected that aspect yet here. So many of the instructional standards at elementary and middle math are focused on concrete targets, such as creating models, creating equations, and using strip diagrams or fraction representations. These are difficult expectations to teach virtually. And so we've just seen just the entire time here, remotely, in person, all the different groups have not been on track to really hit our math goals. And this is an area that we're going to be working on, obviously, for the rest of this year, but much more extensively next year, because we know that kids are not on track in math.
So, of course, after this comment/question, I'm definitely going to yield the floor. But one thing that has been, I guess, true for me as I've seen math is that there is a lot more emphasis on proof of answers versus getting to a certain result. And so I often wonder about that when we are looking at how students are learning and retaining information year to year, going through, somewhat simplistic equations to more complex. Because I've always been of the opinion that math is universal. If you don't speak the same language, you're going to have the same math problem, and, you'll get the same response if you know the material. So how much of that is affecting our students in terms of this, I guess, burden of proof that I've seen in quite a few of the elementary data sets? Because I have a niece and a nephew that are both in third grade, helping them with their assignments. And I'm thinking I'm doing a great job. And that may not be what they're learning in the classroom. So is there anything that you would like to speak to as it relates to that?
Yeah, I think it's just echoing the point where our students are, and where many students are in their ability to truly understand mathematics. We've just not perfected that model remotely. And it is, we've not perfected our ability to teach the same way we have in person mathematical concepts where students can grasp them enough where they can prove it, where if they see it in a different situation, they're able to identify the answer, but also prove how they got, to that answer. I just think this is an area of opportunity for us that we, and one of the reasons why we've been wanting to bring more students who have not been successful, both in reading, but particularly in math, back on campus so that teachers can kind of fill gaps in a way that they're much more comfortable and familiar with.
Thank you for those responses. Trustee Cooper.
All right, I heard you say that because the students aren't on campus, it's making it more difficult to teach some of the material or a lot of the material.
Well, no, I'm just saying for some students, and clearly with our data for many of our students, and we are not significantly off track, but we are off track. And I think something like math and learning reading and math remotely are both challenging at this point because we've not perfected that model at all. But I can tell you that math is a lot harder for some of our students based on these data to learn because they don't have that in-person kind of experience that they're used to, particularly for teachers, who have not had a history of teaching math remotely. It's another barrier, that we've just tried to overcome. And clearly here, we're not hitting the mark there for sure. I think there's a lot more help needed from teachers, even in some of the programs where kids are working in by themselves. And folks ask me all the time, hey, are people cheating on these assessments because they're remote? Unless our families only going to help kids on the literacy piece and not on the math, it seems like, these are giving us an accurate representation of where kids are, because these, again, correlate with what we've seen all year here across the state and across this country.
So what adjustments are being made since the online learning is still with us? Are we making adjustments to help the teachers effectively teach the students that are online?
Absolutely. So part of the adjustment is students that have shown to not be successful are being required to come on campus, number one. And so we've been kind of gradually phasing kids back in and much more aggressively. I think in about a month or so time, we'll double the number of kids that are required to be back on campus for this very reason. Okay. I think two is a shift in the instructional approach. So, up until today, we've primarily, even if you've been in person, you receive your instruction, you've learned kind of through our remote setup. That way teachers aren't necessarily doing two things. They're not teaching to kids in person and online. Everyone has a laptop computer. Everyone is getting that. Mm-hmm. And that may work for some kids, but for other kids, it is not working. So what we've decided to do is switch that approach. So if you're in person, you have an in-person teacher, mm-hmm. and that teacher is not focused teaching online. It is just us together, mm-hmm. and we're going through our normal kind of process of teaching and learning. If you are remote, then you're focused squarely on remote students. Mm-hmm. And your professional learning is how do you better, learn how to teach students remotely. And these are kids that, based on our data are showing some progress in math, not enough to require them to come in. So something is working for them. It gives the teacher a little bit more opportunity to, hone in on students based on their need. But I think the professional learning supports, the different instructional approaches. And then I think, making sure that kids have more manipulatives, so they're actually able to do much more tactile things and creating. This is more as I leave in, my kindergartner was cutting out, squares and circles and the different, figures and had to, manipulate them to show some of the mathematics. So teachers are starting to adjust their approaches. Even if you're at home, there's still something tactile you can do. Right. And especially if you're in the building or on campus, then here are the different ways that you can get kind of a more normal experience. In addition, in some of our grade levels, we have moved towards individual tutoring. And so this is something that we're, testing out right now, but something that you'll see much more widespread next year is, how do we get more time on task with expert teachers and also expert tutors, so kids can fill some of the gaps that they have from this year. And so I think that's something else that we've been working on and implementing as a result of looking at our data.
Thank you. We have a question from Vice President Fleming.
Thank you. I still want to, I kind of want to ride where Trustee Cooper was rolling. I want to roll down the road. Because we talked about the data, and if you look at the data versus virtually in person is actually performing lower than virtual. And so you talk to all of the manipulatives and things that we're doing, but we have students who are in person and still not gaining the traction that we're looking for as far as growth.
Right. So that is precisely the reason why the instructional approaches that began today across our campuses have made a shift. Whereas prior to today and throughout the entire year, everybody received their teaching and learning through a computer, whether you were on campus or at home. So you walk to one of our campuses, you can be in a classroom, the teacher could be in the classroom, students would be in the classroom, and students would engage with the teacher in the classroom via their computer. That was our setup. That's what we needed. But as we got more data in, as we began to shift and require more kids to come on campus, and that necessitated us to switch our approach. And so what we're doing now, if you're in person, you're going to get a true in-person experience where the teacher is not focused primarily on delivering to students via the computer. But your teacher is in the classroom, up, moving around, working with kids, getting as close as they can, that's safe for them, but it'll be a much more normal experience. Whereas up until today, it hadn't been. It's just kids were on campus, but they were still part of our remote learning.
So extension of what you just said, then how are we marketing that to parents as if to let them know that it'd be something different that they're getting coming back into school?
Absolutely. We got a whole campaign that our team has been working really hard on, and we'll be launching these next soon. But it'll be very clear about what the instructional model is, what's different. I think there's videos of what folks can expect. In addition to trying to show parents, here are the measures we're taking to provide a safer environment for your students and for teachers. And so I think, we'll start to see a lot of videos and, communication that shows both the different instructional approach and how we're doing our absolute best to keep everyone safe. So parents can have a little more confidence in bringing kids back and knowing that they're going to get something differently than what we were able to do before. I can tell you, our approach had been purely for what I'm calling, safe learning, safe for teachers, safe for kids. And as our context becomes different, as teachers become more vaccinated, as we learn more about this virus, we're able to provide a more kind of normal setup. And when I say normal, I almost cringe because, we're not in a rush to get back to normal, but I can say that the normal setup with some differences is actually going to be where we're headed moving forward. And so I think that's a great question. Though parents can expect a different experience from kids when they return to campuses now, moving forward.
Okay, so the extension of that, because I kind of want to go back to the data. When we're looking at our left students, and I guess just even looking at what they're doing in reading as well. So how is TELPAS scoring being utilized if there are linguistic deficits for our EL learners? And shouldn't there be a correlation between the data? Like, shouldn't we know, again, if linguistic is a challenge that you actually, you gave a summary about? If that is a challenge, then how are we actually utilizing that, and how does that come together as data points to inform your practice?
Yeah, so TELP is, again, this assessment kind of measures the annual language development for all of our English learners who have language deficiencies. The TELP has measures the English language proficiency standard, so the ELPS, just like the STAR measures the TEKS. ELs have English linguistic deficits, instant identifications of such in TEAMS and LPADs. Our ELs will struggle because they are learning the content in a language other than their own. So they're learning content in a new language, and as they're also learning the language. So I think that is part of the struggle. There is a correlation between TELPIS scores and the academic achievement of ELs. Those who are at the beginning and intermediate levels in the 4 TELPAS domains, which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing, are the ones who struggle more, especially our newcomers in the secondary level who only get ESL and not bilingual. So we're trying to make some adjustments and making sure that our teachers are, prepared with that ESL certification that can better help some of our students. But yes, there is a correlation. No, at this point, we have not necessarily been tracking that correlation with TELPIS, but I think that's something that we can do moving forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Clark?
Thank you. So what I heard you saying, Dr. Weaver, was students are going to now get a new experience starting today if they're on campus learning. Is that correct?
So yes, what I'm saying is that we have started to shift our instructional approach for students who are in campus, and if you are remote, teachers will either teach students that are in person only and teach them in person, or teach students remotely only if they're remote.
Right, that's what I gathered. So my concern or my question is, what's the social emotional effect that has on students switching teachers at the end of the school year when they've gotten used to a teacher the entire year?
Sure, yeah, there are definitely some trade-offs. And as we look at our learning data, just like Pastor Cooper mentioned earlier, there was a need to make some in-game adjustments because the output academically hasn't been what we wanted it to be. And the most consistent issue and the biggest issue that we've seen at this point that we could affect was the actual way students were receiving their daily instruction. And I think that puts a little bit more responsibility, on those teachers. If some students, because not every student has a different teacher, there are some campuses where the teacher has not changed at all, but there are some campuses where that did happen. And in those cases, it will require additional community building, communication with parents, and then also working with school counselors and other support staff to provide any additional support for those kids that are needed. But our main focus with this shift was to try to provide a better instructional kind of delivery system for kids, especially if they were not performing at the level that we will all want them to perform. And especially if parents have chosen not to allow the student to come back to campus. So I think part of it was a choice that if you want to stay with your teacher, you can, you would have to switch into this different mode. So if you were remote and you had a different teacher, then you can keep that teacher, you got to come on campus. If you're on campus and your teacher's remote, then you could be with that teacher in a remote setting. But as we start to gradually bring kids back to campus, we're trying to incentivize parents and kids with on-campus instruction.
So I hear all of that. My question still that we literally skipped over is the social emotional aspect and component that comes with a student having to regroup, relearn, re-understand a whole new teacher. And I feel like when these decisions are made at the end of the school year, because it's definitely after spring break that this has occurred, we put a strain on students for adult performances, ultimately. And I feel like nobody ever, the counselor in me says, nobody ever looks at the impact that that truly has on students because people are only concerned with the data. So you skip a whole component of looking at the students' mental capacity and what strain you're putting on them. So I say that to preface, do not do schedule changes in the middle of school year. Like, and seriously, because people really don't understand the impact that has on students' learning. Y'all think it's a good thing for students, but ultimately it destroys them. And student performance typically goes down because they're trying to learn a new teacher at this moment. So I think those are things that have to be considered moving forward instead of we need our data to rise. So let's do this in the best interest of adults right now.
Well, thanks, Trustee Clark. I truly understand that perspective, and I think we'll have to be even more mindful. And I think there's some things that we can do right now if there are students in that situation that we can pay a little bit more special attention to their transition if that occurred. We aren't looking at this from a numbers perspective, although we are using our data to make decisions about what's best for kids learning. What I hear you saying is, don't just think about the academic side, also think about the social emotional side. And that's the point well taken.
Yes, Trustee Banks.
My question is, what does the teacher schedule look like?
Are you unmuted? You're not unmuted. I'm sorry. Can you say that? No, you're good.
My question is, what does the teacher's schedule look like during that day period? How is she accommodating both online and in classroom and still getting the same results if those children are back? How is she, we have to even think about her mental health with those being more people in the classroom.
Yep.
Oh, y'all taking over.
So what does her schedule look like? What do their schedules look like?
Absolutely, and great question. I think again, that's exactly why we've made the change, is because we did have teachers that were concerned with students in person and students remotely, and so this shift is actually a shift that we've seen happen in other districts as they moved away from remote to more in person. Is this identification of an in-person teacher and a teacher for families and kids that choose remote. That just helps those teachers be able to focus relentlessly on the children in front of them without having to be considered of either remote kids or students that are choosing remote instruction and the kids in front of them. So it just creates a little bit more focus and clarity for the educator. But to Trustee Clark's point, it definitely is something for us to consider the transition that kids have to make if they are some of the kids that are, moving, switching teachers. And one of the things that I'll do for you all is I'll find out and put it in the soonest report I can, either this Friday or next week, what percentage of students had that teacher switch and what we're doing to make sure that they are transitioning well to the new teacher. I think that's good information I can provide for you all. So you
and
can
are
know.
the teachers doing the shared information with them of what they've done with that student? Are they doing shared information? Or?
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. And I'll find that out too. I'm pretty sure if there's definitely a handoff and some collaboration. And oftentimes those teachers are teaching on the same team. And so they're already collaborating and communicating about students and families. And so I'll find out exactly the number of students that affects, and then I'll report to you all out where we are.
Thank you, Dr.
Great questions. Trustee Go.
Yes.
One of the things I continue to hear is that our problem really started last spring when we passed students who were failing, who did not do any work the second half of the year, and their grades dropped significantly. And so, but we went ahead and we passed them, and I understand all of that about last year. But my question is, what is our plan to either pass students, or how are we going to handle that? Because I'm still hearing from staff that several students log in, but they're not getting the work completed at home on Zoom. And so we have quite a significant population that is failing this year.
Yes.
And so I guess we're to spring, we're to April. So what is our plan for how are we going to, if we cannot remediate those children in the next 2 months, what are we going to do about the pass-fail situation?
That's a great question. I can tell you that that if students are failing courses, not completing assignments, if attendance is below a certain threshold,
no, a lot of their attendance is great because they're logging in. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, that's okay. No, so it's one of those kind of factors. So it could be attendance or it could not be attendance. But if they're not completing assignments, they're not, passing courses, English,
Yes.
math, etc., then those students are losing the option of being remote. So that's like step number one. Right now, if you're not passing classes, if you're not learning, then we are starting to eliminate the option to learn remotely. Because for some reason that is really not working for you. It's our fault. Come back in. Let us provide what you need. And I think that's our first line of defense. That started back in January. And again, we're projecting to have a little bit more than 4,000 students back on campus in the next few weeks, because that's the number of kids. There's additional 2,000 or so students that they're going to be required to be back on campus for those reasons. So I think that's our first step of accountability. Secondly, last year was such a different year, period of time in this crisis than it is today. Our teachers have been working really hard and really clear about expectations. And so I'll update you all on kind of what kind of, end of course kind of promotion standards, what that looks like this year, if there's any significant changes at all. But I'll be very clear with you early on. But I believe there'll be a very different situation than it was last year, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, you're done?
Well, I just want to say, I hope that's true, because I can't imagine if a student was failing at the end of last year and then we are not able to remediate them in the next 2 months. That means that they are maybe 2 years behind or a year and a half behind now. So I would hate for us to pass them on to the next grade level and then not be able to get the support that they need to catch up. I just don't want them to get further and further behind.
Gotcha.
So that's all I say.
Thank you. I also echo those sentiments, but I do have a question because some of our discussion it's really good. Again, it's really good discussion, but now I'm thinking about how were teachers selected to do virtual versus in person? Because I can imagine, at a certain point, one of those options would appear to be safer than not. So how was that was it volunteer? How volunteers tribute? Like what happened with that?
Well, I know campuses had an opportunity to select the model that they wanted to go with, and then campus leaders had conversations with their teachers to identify, which teacher wanted to be the remote teacher, which teacher wanted to do in person. So there were conversations that were had. I'm pretty sure there was consensus that was built. And in my conversation with teachers, there were a lot of teachers that I've talked to actually wanted to just teach in person, more than what I expected, mainly because they feel like they can be much more effective given their experiences with wanting to help kids learn. Now, that doesn't say that teachers aren't concerned about their safe and healthy. Absolutely they are. But when given, or some of our teachers were given the option, some folks really wanted to just get kids in front of them and wrap their hands around them with distance, of course. And we have some teachers that have really air hugs, right? But and there are some teachers that have really taken on and have gone above and beyond in this remote setting. And they said, hey, I'm in a groove. I like what I'm doing. I'm seeing some results. I'm affecting other students, and I want to keep doing this. And I believe they were also given the opportunity to keep doing that, partly because we need to have some teachers for our students that are remotely. So I've not heard any consternation around that. I'll double check to make sure that folks are, confident with their selections. But our teachers and our principals have been such incredible allies as we've had to make these shifts this year. I'm just really thankful for them.
Thank you. AJ wants to pose a question.
No, he can't.
Yes.
As I'm looking at the data, and I really appreciate how this monitoring report lays out, because we're looking both at literacy and numeracy. You have 3 campuses in the literacy that seem to be, if you scroll back up to the literacy section. So you've got 3 campuses that appear to be and lagging behind their peers quite a bit. But then when you scroll down to numeracy and look at that data set, they actually don't seem, if you go back down, they actually don't seem, 2 of them seem pretty much at the same place where everyone else is at. So when you see that, what is your takeaway from that particular kind of lack of variance on the second one that appears on the first one?
I think the teaching of numeracy at the elementary level, primarily remotely, has been a lift across our board. So I think there's a common denominator of a challenge with that. If I look at the literacy performance here, these campuses are slightly below their targets, but I think there is, some areas around how those campuses have approached literacy for their students. And so I see them as separate kind of content specific kind of instructional challenges that I know these campuses, the principals and the teachers are working through. And part of this could also very specifically be the amount of time students at these campuses are spending in the software program on their personalized learning tracks. I think that is a small factor as well too. I wish I had the utilization reports for these campuses, because then I'd also tell a story. If there's high utilization, then you correlate that with a bit more learning, a bit more preparedness for those assessments. So forgive me, I don't have that piece of data now, but their targets were set to the targets where they were for a reason, based on their performance. I think they're slightly off, but in comparison to other campuses, they are a few more percentage points away. But we're confident that these campuses can turn them around these last few months for sure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, the ending question of the night, per usual.
I gotta follow it. No, I'm gonna follow it. This one.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. So to Conservative Crable's point, Dr. Weaver, then I guess the real question is, how are campuses accounting for and targeting individualized growth? Because if I'm a tier 1, if you're saying I'm tier 1 when I first started out at BOY and I began to slide between MOY and then I decrease instead of increasing, like you said, how are we catching that and targeting that, and how are we using that as, on top of that, the utilization rate to cancel that out and just say this is an academic issue or a teacher issue? Like, how are we diagnosing those?
Yeah, exactly. They respond. Yeah, I think the expectation is that our teachers are looking at the data from these assessments, and they are working with students based on where they are in their small groups based on these data points. And so that, I mean, I think that's how they're using the data to target students.
You said you think though. So is there something that you may need to put in place, or is there something other training? Like what else can be done to ensure that that campuses are looking at individualized growth?
So I know campuses are looking at their student data, and I was just saying.
For, I guess that's a better way.
I'm sorry.
Accounting for, responding to.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like I know that campuses are looking. I don't want to sit here and say I know every single campus, every single teacher has their data package and they're doing X, Y, and Z, but I can't get that information. But I know that is the expectation, and that's something I can provide. You know, in a board report exactly what teachers are doing with the data and how they're intervening for kids. I know that teachers are utilizing this to inform their small group instruction. So I know that is definitely happening, but I'll provide a more detailed response in our board report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I counted about 7 reports that we can expect from you, so I look forward to reading all that good stuff. I look forward to reading all that good stuff. Per usual, board, this is a great opportunity to deep dive into student outcome data, and we did so for over an hour. But lasting question for you. As you know, we are preparing and looking at upcoming budget cycles. What do you need from this board in order to get our students back on track as it relates to individualized growth and numeracy and literacy?
We are at the point where a lot of the conversations we've had back in November, December, January about how we can dramatically improve teaching and learning for our kids. We are at a moment where we have to start to concretize and implement those recommendations. We've been doing just a round of listening and learning from our community, and we'll keep doing that. Over the next few weeks and over the next months, we will start to implement our aspects of our strategic plan and aspects of the plan that we presented to this board on how we can dramatically improve learning for students. And I think at that time, we'll definitely need your support in implementing our plan of action.
Beautifully done and stated. So I look forward to that strategic plan and activating other members of our community to help us as we get our students in DeSoto ISD back on track and beyond as it relates to numeracy, literacy, and overall individualized growth. Beautiful way to move forward. Now we're at item 6, information. We have item A, January tax collections, as well as B, January financials, both presented by Joey Jones. Dr. Weaver.
Thank you, President. Sergeant, I'm going to ask our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Jones, to present these items. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Dr. Weaver. Thank you, board. Tonight, I'd like to present
I think he's muted. You're muted.
Thank you, Dr. Weaver, School Board. I'd like to present the January tax collections first. For the month of January, we've collected $12,144,920.98. Of those collections, $8,368,829 was to the M&O, $3,776,091.90 was for our INS. Year to date, our total tax, you see here as I scroll down, our total taxes due for this year would, in cumulative years, would be $52,993,092.34, and the balance paid through to date is a $48,236,012.79, leaving a balance of $8,892,110.92. Any questions? I'll move to the next report.
Mr. Jones, how is that collected? It says 8 million for the is outstanding. Is that for 2021?
This slide here, Madam Vice, this balance that's remaining is a cumulative total from the year column on the left-hand side of the page of tax year 2020 all the way down to 1999. And those balances are the balances that we've had that have been uncollected all the way back to 1999 through 2020. So this report here gives us clarity, transparency into balances that we have on some stale accounts all the way up through our current levy year of 2020 of the $7,223,200.87 are 86.96% collective.
Okay. And that's just up for the rest, so they'll still continue to collect?
Yes. So each month the collections will take place, and we will expect to collect 100% of the taxes due, which would be in the second column of the left for 2020, which would be $51,147,848.10.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Other questions? I'll go to the next report. Okay. The next report is the monthly financial report as of January 31st of 2021. General fund revenue, $66,444,466 was recorded, and expended to date through January 31st, 2021 was $41,692,641. So through January 31st, we had collected more than we had expended, and that is what we want. We want this trend to continue through the end of our fiscal year of June 30th. Debt service, we had revenue of $15,509,850 and had expended $13,351,800. Also, same trends to where we've collected more than we've expended. So we want that to continue as well. And food service, the trend is not the correct way we want it to go, but we're working as hard as we can to find all the dollars that are there in the food service. But revenue was $979,344, and we had expended $1,355,741 through January 31st. If there are any questions, I'll move to the next report.
I just want to just add again, I didn't see in our board report since our last meeting that there was, I know in our last meeting that we talked about what we'll be doing for food services or making a push to increase our revenue. I don't know if that's still a point of conversation the administration is focused on. I'm not saying you have to focus on it, but I know we did talk about it. So we're just looking for a follow-up from that, Dr. Weaver, as it relates to if there's a focal point for increasing.
Yes, and I'm proud you brought that up. It was on my mind as well. Currently we're anticipating in our upcoming RFP for food service to have it be based on volume, meaning the cost is associated with the volume that the food service provider sells. So they earn a piece of the actual sale. So therefore, there's not a fixed cost component related to the contract. So if they earn, just pulling a number out of the sky, if they earn 80 cents on every $3 meal, then that's what we owe them is what is a percentage of the volume of the meal that they sell. So that's what we want to do for next year. So RFP has that language in there to where it's based on meal count, volume. And so currently what we want to look at this year is I want to make sure that our current food service provider is requesting any and all reimbursable meals back for the district. And I also will review our current contract with our food service provider to make sure that we have expended exactly what we owe to them and not a penny more. So bear in mind that that's what we're going to make sure that we've got that contract reconciled, that we have not overexpended with them. So these are monthly board reports that we're, sharing with you guys. But as we're reconciling the books and as we're clearing up any balances or any things that need to be reconciled, that is on the top of my list to make sure that our current food service contract is properly being expended.
Okay. And RFP, has it been put out yet?
It has not been put out yet, no.
Are we still within guidelines and dates to post?
The guidelines for to be submitted to the TDA for approval after we bring it to our school board is April the 26th. Okay. So there is a little bit more than a month as of today to post it, review it, present it to the board, and then present it to the TDA for approval.
A couple of days, because we have a board meeting 2 days before it's due.
Exactly. So the deadline is very, very narrow. It is extremely narrow. But I followed up with that this morning to see where we were and to see where we were with the approval from the TDA. The process of that is you write the RFP and you send it to the TDA, Texas Department of Agriculture. They review it and either give you the thumbs up or thumbs down on the language that's in the contract. And that is what has been the holdup, is it has been reviewed 3 times now, and they have found certain pieces that they wanted us to correct.
April 24th? Okay. Thank you.
All right, this kind of goes a request from everyone as you are presenting. I am the novice of the group, and so when you guys use a lot of RFP and DDC and DBG, and can y'all please, when you start the conversation, go ahead and tell me what that is, and then you can go right into using those OPP and G, whatever you want to use. But just give me, start out. Help me out so that I'm not trying to decipher what you're saying. All right?
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. I do think that a board glossary would be great practice moving forward. So duly noted, Trustee Cooper. Is that the conclusion? I didn't want to cut you off.
Yes, that is the conclusion of my report for the board.
Thank you so much, Joey Jones, always providing that timely information. As we move on to C, Administrative Corrective Action Plan. Dr. Weaver, or did you want to take this?
I would like to have and I'll do the same thing with you as well. I'd like to have the superintendent walk through the rough draft of the new corrective action plan, and I'll ask you to do the same thing real quickly. So we're in the final month of your current corrective action plan, and people can see the data for themselves in the current administrative corrective action plan. They've materially conducted the majority of the items that they've indicated. And so that I'm comfortable with. I think at this point, it's best to look forward. The key difference that I would identify between the current corrective action plan for both the board and the administration and the future corrective action plan is that the last 6 months plans for both were really around incredibly basic items, basic blocking and tackling. The next 6 month plans, as you should see from both the administration and the board, are really digging into what can we be doing that's going to drive improvements in the quality of instruction that students are actually experiencing. And so this is much less basic, how do we perform rudimentary functions in the organization, and much more, how do we actually drive performance improvements for children. And so I'll just ask the superintendent to just do a really brief overview of the sections of yours, and then Madam Chair, I'd ask you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. So our first section, again, revolves around academics, and this is us, how are we setting up the organization next year and the years after to dramatically improve learning for kids. And a lot of people are talking about learning loss. We're just, phrasing this as how are we accelerating learning for kids, providing every kid a personalized experience. Part of this plan talks about us creating kind of action plans and implementing those plans in terms of how this has impacted student learning in areas like high dosage tutoring, ensuring that kids are, to your point, Trustee Fleming earlier and others, what are the actual interventions that students are receiving? And then how are we providing that kind of the campus specific, content area specific professional development that's going to help teachers grow and improve. This also includes aspects of professional learning communities. Again, making sure that we have the organizational structures in place where teachers can convene to do things that are important. Creating units of study, looking and responding to data, having an opportunity for them to look at student work, analyze those, and then make adjustments. And then we're continuing to implement, our approach to improving capacity, and that's kind of job embedded, non-evaluative coaching. And so you see that continued in our academic plan. In our last iteration, we talked about setting up our multi-tier systems of supports for students. Here, we're talking about actually delivering on those interventions at the tier 2 and tier 3 levels to ensure that accommodations and targeted interventions are happening. This also includes additional tutoring aspects. We're continuing to look at, kind of these data-driven instruction meetings. So after we get data points back, who do we have at the table looking and then responding to those data points in a real-time basis to ensure that teachers are getting what they need and kids are getting what they need. And then finally, the last one is starting to kind of operationalize some of the big shifts that we're making over the next 5 years to a competency-based system, and then really looking at our curriculum to start making that a lot more social justice oriented, culture responsive, and then looking to do some pilots of that in certain grade levels next year with kind of full rollouts beginning our 22-23 school year and beyond. And so that's kind of the academics part of our CAP plan moving forward for the next 6 months. On our finance side, we're still looking to, everything that we're doing is to improve our first financial rating. Again, this is a draft, but we're still looking at some of those tasks that could ruin our audit, that could impact our first financial rating. So you still see aspects here that we'll be working on. Again, we'll be building out this a little bit more so we can kind of progress monitor this on a month-to-month basis. But these are kind of the general aspects that we're looking at. And one of the new aspects that we're looking at here too is how are we providing resources for those areas that the board has deemed as a focus area for our children, particularly pre-K through 3rd grade. So how are we financing and supporting from a financial standpoint some of the academic goals? I think you'll see that moving forward. And then on the talent side, this is all about retaining our most effective personnel. How are we differentiating around for performance, ensuring professional development and learning is happening, reducing number of contractual issues, and kind of updating certain policies that make for a much more effective kind of workforce. I think you'll also see us here trying to figure out how do we differentiate and support all teachers, but especially our most effective teachers based on how our students are learning. I think you'll also see progress measures here. AJ?
Yeah, greatly appreciate it. Obviously, as I mentioned, this is a rough draft. The current corrective action plan goes through the conclusion of this month, and so at next month's meeting, we'll see the final draft of the board's corrective action plan for the next 6 months and the administration's. But this gives us some clear indication of the trajectory that the administration is moving in and trying to make significant operational changes that align with the expectations that this board is appropriately set for them, that it is not appropriate to not know where we are with these things, that the board and families deserve to know where are we at in the implementation of these changes. This corrective action plan will afford us that. So thank you, sir. Madam Chair.
Yes, for the sake of the recording, we are now at item D, Board Corrective Action Plan. And so as directed by Conservator Craybill, I will be sharing my screen for the draft of the next 6 months Board Corrective Action Plan. I must start by saying kudos to this board, because we have truly been doing a lot of work, and so as much was evidenced in our last quarterly self-assessment, in which we went, from your own words, from 0 to 63 real quick in IWO. And so one of the best things that I can say too is that this corrective action plan is not foreign to any of us. It is based off of the integrity instrument in which we did our assessment on. And so board, as well as those that are watching from home, you will see that a lot of this is taken from some of the measuring points as it relates to setting the vision. So again, we have a newly adopted in December set of student outcome goals, as well as vision and mission, as we did approve and receive our latest strategic plan. And so a part of that is, again, committing these things to memory, as well as coming up with one or more theories of action to drive overall strategic direction. And again, this comes directly from the integrity instrument that we use just to move us from meets to masters. Also, we kind of alluded to it earlier as it relates to the broad ownership, the broad community ownership of the board's vision and student outcome goals, as well as communicating that throughout the entire organization, again, starting with the board. The other aspect of this is focusing on the vision. So we did, since we are in a period of elections, there will at least be one new board trustee. And so we're just keeping with the number of comments made, as well as the number of times that board members speak out against any one vote, as it was in our previous board cap, along with making sure that we are monitoring student outcomes at least 50% of the time. And there is also an aspect of the integrity instrument that alludes to a time use tracker, as well as monitoring the staff use tracker. So the staff use tracker is actually how many times that board members give a directive to administration. That's considered the staff use tracker. All we do is monitor that. We don't necessarily clock that. But as it relates to the time use tracker, that is something that will have to be trained upon, as mentioned here, by an LSG coach. Again, as we get to communicate the vision, this just speaks to the level of training. So board, did you realize that after 2 years, our LSG training expires? I was bummed for you guys, but hey, September 1st of 2021, that at least alleviates some time to get that particular training in, as well as continually lead town halls for the community. One thing that we were able to moderate was the state of the district this past weekend. And a lot of the community members are thirsting for more opportunities to interact with board members and hear what is going on in our district directly from us. And I do believe that hosting these 2 trainings will give an opportunity to interface more directly with the community. Again, taken directly from the integrity instrument as it relates to goal progress measures. To make sure that they are adequately displayed across our meeting area. And again, that the attendance of all board members maintains at least 80%. All right, so now we get into implementing the vision. Racial equity training is something that actually came up. As you know, board, we do have a board constraint that will not allow for us to update the AE local. There are a few policies that are currently embedded in AE Local that kind of requires some training and some background. But again, we'll go into more detail as you'll see the next couple of boxes. Also to work more closely with administration to create and continue a culture of team building with administration as well as agreements. That was something that we talked about in our January team building activity. And then this is actually one of our recommendations from Conservator Crable as it relates to going on a policy diet. And I also included in that last box down here as it relates to finances and school finances as it relates to conveying that information to the community, both of which I think will be great focal points as we entertain, I guess you could say, reactivating the finance committee as well as the policy committee. If you all choose to do that, this will allow for tasks to be associated over the next 6 months that can then again go back to our conservator to show that we are on the up and up as it relates to governing here in DeSoto ISD without the intervention of the TEA. Any questions?
Again, just want to applaud the progress and look forward to being a supporter, a coach, but mostly a cheerleader over the next 6-month period. Well done, both administration and board.
Awesome, thank you, and thank you again. Before we get into consent items, I just wanted to see if we had a motion on the floor.
Madam President, I have a motion.
Yes, Dr. Clark.
I move that we waive board policy BF local regarding first read of policy to allow the revisions to DC policies to take effect immediately.
Second.
All right, thank you, Dr. Clark, for that motion on the floor to remove the need or necessitate for a second read as it relates to policy. Thank you, Trustee Banks, for that second. I do not think that these things work as it pertains to voting. So I will start with, is there anyone who has opposition to this vote at this time? No, is there anybody who needs to abstain from this vote at this time? All right, it looks like that particular vote passes unanimously with all 7 board members being in agreement, which brings us to item 7. Consent items. Again, all items will be acted upon at the same time. And I will ask the same question now that we're at consent agenda. Is there any opposition to the consent agenda as presented? Are there any abstentions to the consent agenda as presented? Okay, I will take that as approval. So again, the consent agenda passes unanimously 7-0. Well, board, we have no action or discussion items at this time. I do not believe that we have any public comments on non-agenda items either. I would like to say thank you again to all of the community that were able to tune in for this past weekend State of the District. There will be another opportunity coming up this weekend where you will learn more information regarding the strategic plan. In addition, there will be a joint meeting this upcoming Thursday with DeSoto City Council. And so we definitely want to invite you all out to attend that meeting as well, happening this Thursday. Zoom link and information will be posted to the DeSoto ISD website. And as you know, this is Women's History Month. Love a woman in your life, because after all of us came from one. And I did not want to negate the opportunity to recognize our current valedictorian, Kayla Glover, who is also a member of the state champion Lady Basketball Eagles. So again, congratulations to our Lady Eagles for their first ever state champions. And I call this meeting adjourned at 9:20 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.